Welcome to Qatar KickAround, the nightly wrap-up and discussion of the day's action in the 2022 World Cup. From the group stage to the final, our team is here, keeping you on top of the world's most watched sporting event. Brought to you by Westwood One Sports.
Hi-ho, and welcome to Qatar KickAround, our quarterfinal preview, as we're Adam's apple deep into all the action at the 2022 World Cup taking place over there in Qatar. Hi, it's me, Peter, tagging along with the guy that knows everything about World Cup, Andy Swift.
Peter, how are you?
And you know him, you love him. He's live from London, noted football journalist and mythical hooded figure, Lars Sivertsen. I got a direct message the other day, Lars. Somebody asked me, why is Lars wearing a hoodie?
It's cold.
And I said, because it's cold. And he said, does Lars not have a heater?
Clearly he's outside, don't you?
Yes. And I said, he's clearly outside in the little town square in Richmond.
Yes, of course. That's also. And also, I mean, you become very self-centered about these things, and I take it for granted that everyone knows what's happened to energy prices on this side of the Atlantic.
I explained it to him.
It's not that we can't afford to, but we're trying just to be a little bit sensible with the heating.
You're conserving, and I get it. That's good.
Yeah. And it's made worse by the fact that my little sort of side room where I have my office is right next to a door out to the backyard, which is pretty drafty. So,
I was going to say you might want to close the door, Lars. That would
help. Of course, No. Sometimes the dog will act as a draft excluder, which is very nice of her. Sometimes she lies down right in the door, which helps me a lot. But not.
She also has a big coat.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, I missed you guys yesterday. I just wanted to tell you that right off the bat.
Yeah, long time no see, guys. How have you all been?
I was like a bad drug addict, just like
didn't know what to do
with myself.
Went from room to room, wandering the house.
I mean, first off, it's bad enough not to have any World Cup soccer to watch, but then two, not to hang out with Andy and Lars for an hour at the end of the day. That was a real problem.
What did you guys do with all your spare time now that there was no football on?
Andy?
I researched World Cup numbers, came up with the
on brand.
I went back and watched all of the games at 4X and stayed up for 48 hours straight. That's what I did. Do you believe me?
No, not at all. But...
see, I thought the correct answer is, yeah, actually, now that I think about it, if you probably did do that.
I got a haircut.
Not even you. Yeah, you know what? You're looking young. You're looking young, Andy. I watched the entire 4-part FIFA documentary on Netflix. Thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh, you did.
And I watched the Louis van Gaal documentary that's on Amazon Prime. I thought that was pretty good as well.
Okay, Can we start with Louis van Gaal's quote today? Have you guys seen this? Have you not heard this?
No.
So apparently a reporter at their press conference said something about Angel Di Maria, remember, who played for Van Gaal at United.
Right.
And said something about Van Gaal being the worst coach he ever had.
Oh, wow.
And Louis said something to the effect, and tell me if I'm paraphrasing this incorrectly, Lars, that, well, that's too bad. I'm sorry he feels that way. It was a pretty bad time over there. By the way, Memphis Depay also played during that time, and he probably experienced all that too. But now we kiss each other on the mouth.
Yeah, that's more or less what he said.
I thought he was just going to say Di Maria was the worst player I ever coached.
No, just Louis van Gaal just having a normal one in the press conference there. He is great value, and I would say that if you have, it's a bit long. It drags a little bit in the middle, but the Louis van Gaal documentary that I think is on Amazon Prime in your territory as well, is quite interesting because it's a very human portrait of a guy that doesn't always come across as a very human person. I mean, he obviously goes through some medical trouble, as you might be aware. He had a brush with cancer, had to have radiation treatment, and they also revisit sort of his career and everything. So if you're really interested in soccer and Dutch soccer history in particular, and Louis van Gaal as a character, it's well worth your time.
We will do that. In fact, I get told of new soccer content on all the streamers all the time that I'm not even aware of. Somebody sent a note to us today, something called Good Rivals or Great Rivalries or something. And there's a U.S.-Mexico episode about it. Had no idea. Somebody said it was really good.
And I forgot the thing that I almost liked the most about the Van Haldok is that he is fully obsessed with his wife, which I think is really sweet. A lot of sports people talk about being family people and talk about their family. But the thing about you notice about Van Gaal is that he very often mentions his wife by name when in interviews and stuff. You know, when he gets asked if he wants this, if he's interested in so and so job, he will say stuff like, "Yes, well, I have to ask Drews," and this sort of thing, which I think is really sweet. And you really get that vibe from the documentary that he's massively crazy about his wife, which I think is really sweet.
He's the Dutch version of Mac Brown and Sally. That's a college football reference, Lars. I don't get you. Expect you to get. Andy, you got it right. Mac Brown, the UT coach.
I know Mac Brown. Oh, and
he
Sally,
always talks
wife.
about his wife Sally.
I was like, in Sally, like what show is Sally?
And Sally, and Sally. Okay, well, we've goofed
right.
off way too long. Nobody tunes in to Qatar Kick-Around for this kind of stuff, or maybe they do.
Maybe
I don't
they
know. So today we are going to cover the 4 fantastic quarterfinal games. Tomorrow being Croatia and Brazil, Netherlands and Argentina, and Saturday Morocco and Portugal. And oh, God bless FIFA's heart, they got their best game last. England. France.
Heartstopper.
But we'll start with Professor Andy's World Cup Trivia, brought to you by Soccer 90. Come on, Andy, we got to do the business.
Yes, all right. So let's talk about the first set of games, that quadrant involving Brazil, Croatia, the Netherlands, and Argentina. Since the current format was introduced, and by the way, these 4 teams have played in 16 finals over the history of the World Cup.
Okay.
16. Between the 4 of them. That's a lot. But since the current format was introduced in 98, that's 32 teams. That's the last 6 World Cups. Which team out of these 4 has reached the semis the least amount of times? So we got Netherlands playing Argentina, Brazil playing Croatia.
Of these, okay.
Of
so
those 4 teams since 98, the last 6 World Cups. You know, the current format where they expanded to 32 teams, which of those has reached the semifinals the least amount of times?
This is a trap question, Lars.
Answer
It always
at
is.
the top
Yes.
of the third.
Yes, we will answer the question later. Don't cheat. Don't Google it.
No.
Don't go to DuckDuckGo and look for it. All right. So, speaking of which, let's go ahead and talk about tomorrow. But let me ask this general question, and I'm going to ask Andy because he is the World Cup expert. I feel like this is one of the best set of quarterfinal games in World Cup history.
Yeah, I think you'd go back to 2006 to get a better set of 8 finalists.
And who were the 8 in 06?
Huh?
Who were the 8 in 06?
We had Argentina, we had the Netherlands, we had Italy, we had France, we had Brazil, Portugal. It was all the heavy hitters, Germany.
Awesome. This is good.
Right? But this is a good one.
Yes.
And we even have out of all the teams, the one that is kind of like out of place is Morocco. But I feel like Morocco is kind of a favorite, like a darling of the neutral, right?
It's nice to have one underdog in there, I think.
I agree. Yeah.
And I also think what's strong about this lineup is it's really hard to point to a team and say they really should have been there and they're not.
Exactly.
I don't feel like there hasn't been a great injustice, which is
no.
good.
And what's interesting is I don't think I'm wrong in saying this. I don't think there's a team in this tournament that has played well through the entire tournament.
Right. Nobody's like had 4 bang up games.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody's had kind of a low point and
a
high
hiccup
points.
here and there.
Yeah, for whatever reason. All right, let's start with Croatia and Brazil. That game is at 9 o'clock Dallas time tomorrow, 10 Eastern. Lars, I will start with you. Do the old Croats have any chance against the amazing Brazilians?
I don't really think so. But listen, that's what we do here on this show. When there's a clear favorite, we spend all our time talking up the other team, trying to convince ourselves there's a chance. And listen, of course, they're a wily bunch, Croatia. And we know that Brazil's recent history in knockouts against European teams is not good. We know that Croatia have a habit of just being difficult to beat and all this sort of stuff. If they were all box fresh, if they were all 100%, I would have said absolutely Croatia can take it to Brazil. But I've been just a little bit worried by just how tired Croatia have looked and just, the fact that Neymar is back sooner than expected is bad, and the fact that Brazil have looked solid defensively I just think it's a really hard thing to build a case for Croatia here. At the end of the day, you expect Brazil to create more chances than Croatia in this game, and usually the team that creates the most chances will win. But even if Croatia can sort of equalize that balance there a little bit somehow, you don't really trust Croatia's forwards to take any of those chances because they're really weak at center forward. So I'm really, really suspicious doubtful that they have much of a chance.
So to further Lars's point about tired legs, I'm going to give you some.
Are you sandbagging because you're
some stats
of
No,
Croatian descent?
I'm going to give you some numbers, and then you tell me what you think.
Okay.
In the knockout round since '98, teams that have played a team in the this is quarterfinals on. Teams that haven't had to play in the PK in the game that went all the way to PKs the game before against the team that did. In other words, one team had a 90-minute game.
Mm-hmm.
The other team had to go to extra time and PKs. 75% of the time, the team that didn't have to go to extra time won. All right, so that's already advantage Brazil.
Very good, very good.
So Brazil in this tournament has had the most rotation of any team in the tournament. And
aren't they the only team that's played all 26 of their roster players?
They're the only team and they've also used the most subs. They're the only team that used all 5 subs every game they played.
What a concept.
The least out of all the quarterfinalists, Croatia. So they've had the least amount of rotation.
Yeah, and the fact they had to go the distance and play 120 minutes added to the fact that, you know what, they looked tired in the last game of the group
already,
stage.
Right.
Already then they were looking leggy.
And compared to Argentina, Netherlands, which has 6 days in between matches, they both have 6 days. Brazil and Croatia have to play after only 4 days. So not only does Croatia have all these things going against it, they have a shortened amount of rest time to begin with. So, you tell me, Peter, am I sandbagging? I mean,
no, those are all very good facts.
Anything can happen. That's why they play.
It is, but this will not be. They won't be the South Koreans, or will they?
No, I don't think they will.
You would never expect a midfield with that much experience and that much savvy to get overrun in the way South Korea did. And that actually brings us to the thing I think is probably the most interesting to talk about ahead of this game, for me anyway, me being slightly boring and a nerd, is what does Chiche do with that midfield? Will he be tempted? Because they have this sort of thing where against South Korea, you played Casemiro and Paqueta and Neymar as a roaming guy who could do whatever he wanted, and Casemiro to hold and Paqueta to link it all together. The temptation must be, fatigue aside, the temptation must be when you're up against the midfield as good as the Kovacic, Brozovic, Modric thing, to add Fred, just to have a bit of running power and for at least for the first hour to be more competitive in that area of the field. Who do you drop then? Probably one of the wingers. The natural thing would be actually to drop Vinicius, because then Neymar will just drift out in those wide left areas. But you don't really want to drop Vinicius because he's been really good. You didn't shuffle him over to the right side instead of Rafinha. He's not super comfortable on that flank. There's some interesting questions to do with the lineup, I think, ahead of this game for Brazil.
So, but the other side is what does Dalic do? The Croatian coach. How do you approach this game? You have tired players. You're going with your guys. You're playing Brazil. Do you defend? Do you try to hold your own in midfield? Because you can, but you can't for 90 minutes, I don't think.
No, I think they're going to have to try to drag down the tempo a little bit. I think going out with a sort of surprise high press would not be smart. Just because Brazil have so many players who are really good one-on-one as well, so they can just dribble past you. And I suspect they'll try to keep some possession, try to take the tempo down. I think Dalic has an issue up front. Which of these bad strikers do you start?
Which of these bad strikers do you put up front to not touch the ball very much?
Whichever is prepared to run. Maybe it's a little bit. Maybe he's. I wonder if you might even play with the idea of playing Perisic as a striker, because not just because he scored that header against Japan, but because he has a bit of presence. He runs a lot, so he'd put pressure on the center halves. Maybe, but I just don't. I'm usually the one who's here talking up the underdogs. I just have a really hard time seeing it. I don't see where I don't see where the obvious flaws for Brazil are. I mean, I guess it's the midfield if the balance isn't quite right, but and they're so solid at the back as well, Brazil, which is what sort of
frightening.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, and I mean. Yeah, no, and they're not even vulnerable down the flanks because they're playing quite defensive fullbacks and just letting their wingers do their thing. So you can't really, it's really, really difficult to see where it would go wrong for them.
All right, I'm going to go Brazil probably 3-0. Andy?
I think it'll be close. The first half, it might still be a game. Come halftime, maybe the 65th, maybe 1-1, 0-0, but then Brazil, I think, will get two late ones, 3-1.
Okay, Lars?
Yeah, I also I do trust Croatia to kind of stick in the game somehow, maybe even magic up a goal from somewhere. So let's call it 2-1. But I really don't see the upset happening here.
All right, 1:00 Dallas time, Netherlands, Argentina. This one has been a sneaky game. We've known this game was likely going to happen for a long time, but I think we'd had this very clear narrative in our head that this was just going to be maybe the difficult bump in the road for Argentina's path to the final, or at least path to a Brazil-Argentina semifinal, right? But now that we know what we know, I'm just going to tell you now, I want Argentina in the final because I want this Messi storybook ending, but based on how they've played to date, I'm going to predict Netherlands to win this game in a super tight battle.
Well, we're not at predictions yet. Maybe you need to listen to what Lars has to say.
Lars,
you might change your mind.
Change my mind, Mr. Lars.
I'm really sort of racking my brains about this game and these two teams both, really, because as you'll remember, pre the USA game, I was deeply unimpressed with the Dutch in the group stage. Then they were a lot better against a US team that looked a little bit tired, and again, you concede an early goal, so the whole game just doesn't go your way. But I was impressed with how the man Van Gaal just kind of came up with a tactic that just completely nullified what the US wanted to do. And I you know, he is a very clever manager, and he
kisses his players on the mouth, apparently.
And he has some interesting things at his disposal. I think maybe I've underestimated how effective that back line is. I like the fact that you have like Van Dijk in the middle clearing things, and you have both the wide sort of central defenders on each side have also played fullback on that side, so they can kind of be a little bit mobile up the field. They understand that role very well. And they have those two forwards in Gakpo and Depay, who A, are really good players, B, have got a bit of pace to them, and C, are players who can kind of score out of nothing, which is really useful in a World Cup. So they've got some things going for them. I also intrigued to see what they do with Messi. They have an interesting player in Davy Klaassen, who's ostensibly a midfielder and he played in quite an attacking area, but he's not super creative. He's more of a runner. He has a really good engine on him, really hardworking, honest guy. Maybe he'll do some kind of marking job on Messi. We'll see what they do there in terms of that.
Lars, against the U.S., didn't they man mark?
Did
they have a man marking scheme?
That's basically what they did. Yeah,
in the center of the midfield.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Would they do that with Messi? I don't know. I mean, do they?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because they use the forwards to block the passing lanes out to the fullbacks, and then they man marked in the middle and trusted their players to win the duels in there. Maybe they'll do something similar here. It's possible, but it's just the fact that Argentina just haven't really played well yet. I don't think, and Messi has had incredible moments, but as a collective and as a group, I feel like I trust the Dutch a little bit more. But it could also be that I'm kind of overreacting to one very good game against a slightly tired USA. I don't know, guys. What do you think?
Well, reacting to not just one, it wasn't like they were terrible in the group stage. I mean,
Ecuador game, they were pretty bad, but I suppose you could say they scored early and sat back.
Yeah. Senegal, they had the first half, they didn't look great, but ultimately they won the game 2-0.
Last 20, 15 minutes
they weren't taxed against Qatar. That helped, and Argentina. Look, what has Argentina done? They got upset by Saudi Arabia. Okay, fair enough. That happens. First game out of the way. Then they beat Mexico. I thought that was a good win. Then they beat a bad Poland team.
Not a convincing performance versus Mexico, though.
Exactly.
Very nervy. Very nervy.
And that was their best game, though, because Poland, you can't
Poland were so bad.
You can't judge and then Australia Australia almost tied the game at the end. So if you're going to say Netherlands has only played one game, well, what has Argentina done also?
Yeah, exactly. Because Argentina's best moments in the tournament kind of came in the second half against Australia, who God bless them, they're Australia, and even then, when you had Messi making some good runs and having some good moments, even then they nearly messed it up.
Yep.
They've never looked good. And I say this with a heavy heart because I predicted them to go very far. We're going to repost our wheels, I think, when the tournament is over. And
well, I had Spain playing them in the final. So
I also had Argentina.
I think you and I both, Argentina and Spain.
Yeah.
Screw you guys. I had the Danish playing them in the final.
Mistakes were made. It would be great for me and my ill-fated predictions that if they really turn it on here, but I just don't. They need to raise their level so much. Whereas I think if the Dutch hang together collectively and play it as smartly as they did against the US, I fancy them to get a result out of it.
Yeah, see, this is the group think is working its way.
We're doing. It's happening again. It's happening
again.
But
look, Argentina hasn't beaten the Netherlands since '78 in the World Cup. In that final that they won in Argentina, I mean, the Netherlands, they've gone to PKs once. Netherlands won the other one. They tied one. So it's not like Netherlands can hold their own. Netherlands is a good.
Yeah, I think it's interesting if you're watching the World Cup critically for the first time. Argentina-Netherlands is kind of a historic matchup in the World Cup. They have played each other multiple times.
And a final.
Yeah,
that's a long time ago.
Yeah, but so this is.
And I've just checked the betting odds now, and just converting the odds to sort of implied statistical probability to progress. The betting markets have it at 60-40 in favor of Argentina.
Yeah, because Messi.
Yeah,
it's it's the Messi factor, I'm sure, right?
Hey, did you guys? I know, and now I know Messi minutes are different from everybody else's minutes on the field, but Messi's on maximum minutes.
But he also has license to just stand around half the game.
Yeah, there's a lot of non-running that he does.
Yeah. But which is one of the few players who can get away with that.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Well, no, that's exactly the point. Like that's the thing you learn about Messi very early in the whole Messi education, which is he's the only guy in the history of the sport that has gotten away with doing that just because he turns around and scores a bunch of goals. You wouldn't put up with it otherwise. No. That's for sure. Not at all. Okay, so
all right. Well, what did you say?
I think Holland wins this like 1-0 to like a 1 goal difference. I think it's a very tight game, but I do think the Dutch win the game now.
Do you want me to go, Lars, or do you want to go first?
You can go first, then. Yes, okay.
I think it goes to PKs and the Netherlands prevails.
I like it.
So you think the Dutch win on PKs?
Yeah.
Have they gone to PKs before?
Yeah.
And who's won it?
Netherlands.
Okay. Lars?
You think Van Gaal will do his sort of goofy sort of change the goalkeeper thing again? That'd be, as you might recall.
That's right. And penalties?
In 2014, he was in charge of the Dutch national team, and he swapped goalkeepers just before the shootout in one of the games.
Right. By the way,
against Costa Rica? Oh, it was against someone.
Yeah, the semifinal. Argentina beat the Netherlands in PKs in 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It was Argentina.
And they were in PKs the round before that, which was against Costa Rica, I think.
Correct. And there you go. See, there's the one of those that.
Yeah, and they swapped. He swapped goalkeepers just because he knew. And this is revealed. I never actually had this confirmed anywhere, but he revealed in the documentary that he hadn't told the goalkeeper, the starting goalkeeper, that he had decided in advance. He'd looked at the stats and looked at them in training and decided Tim
Krul. Yeah, who was the other keeper?
Jesper Cillessen was in goal.
Yes.
So Tim Krul, who was really the third goalkeeper in the squad, but his PK stats were good, and so Van Gaal decided if it goes to penalty, I'm going to sub, but he made a conscious decision not to tell Cillessen because he thought it could affect his confidence and motivation.
You think?
Yeah.
So he was kind of banking on when you see Cillessen comes off, he kicks some water bottles and is just not happy about the situation. But Krul saved the day.
Well, what also helps is that they scored all 4 of theirs.
That definitely helps. Yeah.
Now, when they played Argentina got all 4. Messi went first, and the Netherlands missed 2. Argentina does have a penalty kicking goalkeeper, right? Isn't that
Martinez?
One of his? Doesn't he play the head game?
He's the head game guy.
He's the head game guy.
Yeah, he's the guy that talks about your mom and your sister to your face, and
so if it goes PKs,
Well,
in 2014, in that game, Van Gaal couldn't reprise his goalkeeping sub move because he'd used all his subs by then.
Oh,
so he was very frustrated about that.
Okay, so I think we've made our. Lars, did
No,
you make
Lars
your
has
prediction?
not yet.
Lars, you don't get away with snaking off not making your
But
prediction.
I hate this because again we're doing the groupthink thing. That look, the betting markets are rarely that wrong, right? So
Lars, make your pick.
There's a reason that's a very profitable industry. So if all three of us are going for the underdog, I worry that we've kind of convinced ourselves
Make
that
your pick. Quit talking. Make your pick.
I do think the Dutch will do it, man, and that's
Okay.
There you go.
yeah. Argentina have got better players
See?
and they're favorites for a reason.
Was
but I
that
think
hard,
the Dutch will
Lars?
do it.
We win. Look, Lars, we win either way because if Argentina wins, we can just say, yeah, we picked them to get to the final
Yeah.
anyway, pre-tournament. So yeah, we win either way.
and if Argentina win, we almost certainly get the Argentina-Brazil semifinal that we've all been
Right,
thinking about. Yeah,
Right,
Yes.
exactly. Peter, what did you say score-wise?
I just said 2-1-1-0, but go 1-0. Just
Okay,
go
and
1-0.
Lars?
2-1 Holland in extra time.
And added, okay.
And you
1-1
said PK's
full-time.
Dutch.
PK's Dutch,
Okay.
yeah. By the way, I have the results of the round of 16. We'll do that when we start the third segment.
Okay. All right. Very good. Now
The prediction results from
we're running very late, all of you. Bad.
Are we?
Yes,
That's
very
okay.
late. It's okay. We'll make it up. We jibber jabbered too early.
I don't
at
think
the
this
beginning.
is the episode where we're like, there's so much content to get in, we have to rattle along. Come on, guys.
Fair enough. Okay. We will take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about Saturday's quarterfinal games: Morocco, Portugal, England, Fra, and we'll do that next. So here we are, part 2 of our quarterfinal preview of Qatar KickAround. We're at the juiciest part of the World Cup, which is known as the quarter. Is the quarterfinals the best round of the World Cup, Andy?
It's Champions League. It's definitely the quarterfinals. Yeah, I could say probably the same with World Cup.
Okay.
You know why? And let me say why. The teams are all good. They're not all super fatigued yet. Like semis, the final, you get suspensions, fatigue, injuries. This is where you're getting teams maybe at their peak.
I would also throw in that in like the last 16, the previous round, you have some mismatches in terms of talent, right? And also in the semis, fatigue is a big issue, but also you're so close to a final. I feel like that the pressure, and I think it encourages sort of slightly more risk-averse behavior
making
from
mistakes.
from the players. So it gets a little bit more defensive, I suspect.
Yeah,
you
I
you
agree.
know history better than I do, Andy.
No,
so
it's
I'm
true.
not-
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk first about the early game, which will be at 9 a.m. on Saturday, Morocco versus Portugal. And does this have ever so slightly, Lars, kind of a Greece Euro win, championship win, or even Portugal's European championship, where, because we talk a lot about how, defending and keeping goals out is of more value than scoring goals in tournament play. And nobody so far has been as good as the Moroccans at defending. They've given up 1 goal the entire tournament, and they scored it on themselves.
Yeah. They show it to other teams. This is how you score on us, guys.
Yeah, no, they've been very impressive. They've been doing, I think, my phrase for it is they've been doing something I would refer to as extrovert defending, because it's like it's quite defensive and they're sitting back, but it's still very watchable because they're very passionate and they're kind of throwing themselves into everything and just really going for it.
You know what, Lars? I think that's a great term you came up with, it. Extrovert defending, because they're not necessarily like bunkering low block, right? It's not like, it's Catenaccio or even Greece that Euros. This is a very smart low block, mid block, cut passing lanes off, reduce spaces, pressure at the right times. It's a very intelligent management of the scoreline to me.
And they understand that even if you're not engaging with the opponent high up the field, you still have to be very aggressive when you do engage. And because sometimes with teams, when they're told to sit back a bit, they become too passive. Yet they're engaging inside their own half usually, but very, very aggressively when they do engage. And the organization is the thing that's really impressed me. I'm not surprised. There are good players in the squad. You could see that on paper before the tournament. I was very suspicious of how well it would hang together since they had a fairly recent change of coach. And but that side of it's been very impressive. If I have a slight concern for this is that one of the two starting center halves, Naif Haggard, is thought to be injured. I mean, I haven't seen suggestions to the contrary. I mean, he went off injured in the last game. It looked like a kind of a muscly type of thing. So we'll see if he's in the lineup. But if he's out, that definitely hurts them. So that would be a bit of a shame. Also, Roman Saiz, the other center halves, needed treatment towards the end of that game.
Who's the holding mid that's just
Amrabat?
Sofian Amrabat. Yeah,
he's been insane.
Yeah, he plays for Fiorentina. He plays for our.
Well,
Viola. The thing is, as an American, we get really wrapped around this idea of the U.S. roster having a litany of guys that play at big known European clubs. And when you get to some of these African nations, at least, or Asian clubs or Asian nations, you end up seeing a bunch of guys you may not be familiar with. But the reality is that back four of Morocco are four guys that play at legitimately big European clubs. West Ham United, Besiktas, Hakimi's one of the best right backs in the world at PSG, and you got another guy that plays at Bayern Munich on the other side of the field. So it's not like they're just a random group of guys out of an African nation. They're like legitimately world-class players.
And Roman Saiz only recently went to Turkey, to Besiktas. Sorry, I don't want to be a pronunciation ass, but Besiktas.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But he was at Wolves for a number of years and was a very sort of underappreciated but low-key one of the more impressive centre halves in the Premier League with Wolves for a few years, and it's very good. But also, like, up front, like, Hakim Ziyech is a really talented guy. I hope you guys sort of took my advice and kept a close eye on Boufal versus Spain, because he's one of those really goofy players who's so talented but makes so many bad decisions on the field. If you could just reprogram the hard drive there somehow, he would be a very, very good attacker. But he's very watchable.
He doesn't appear to have a gas tank that has a capacity enough for 90 minutes either.
No, not really, no. But he is someone who can suddenly skip past the fullback, even if that's one of the best fullbacks in the world. He has the skill.
All right. So I said this to somebody the other day. Somebody I was having lunch with said, "So who are you picking for the World Cup now?" The final, and I said, well, if you had told me at the beginning that Portugal were going to drop Ronaldo, I would have probably changed my opinions or my predictions.
Or at least how far they went.
Or at least how far they went.
I think all of us,
But the other thing that I didn't have on my bingo card for Portugal was that Pepe was going to have to start at the age of 39 at center back, and as good as he was in the other game, he scored a goal and all that stuff. He's been solid, and that's a guy I used to hate. He was like one of my mortal nemesis players. I admire the fact that at age 39 he's playing in a World Cup. So for all of this exciting youth at the front end of the team, Lars, is that counterbalanced or counter-reacted by the fact they got an old guy playing center half for them?
He's played quite well. He's played quite well, and he's got Ruben Diaz next to him who can move a little bit.
What I would say, Lars, is center backs too, right? I mean, that's where goalkeepers, yes, age not as important, but center backs is the one position where you can play a lot of minutes and still kind of be effective, right?
Yeah. No, I concur. I completely concur. What I find really difficult to judge with this Portugal team is it as simple as with Cristiano Ronaldo out of the team, we saw, in inverted commas, the real Portugal and what they can actually do versus Switzerland. That's one possibility. On the other hand, that is a sample size of one game in which the Swiss were not good. I think they made a strange formation change. They went to back three. Fabian Schär looked like he wasn't quite sure where he was or what he was supposed to be doing. He was very discombobulated in defense. They somehow allowed this Portugal team loads of space to run into. That was an uncharacteristically weird performance by the Swiss. So, and the Portuguese ran riot, yes, but it could be that maybe that's just how good they are, and when they play a center forward who actually runs. But I also think it's one game. So,
So, and this is probably more of a byproduct of them playing the Swiss, I'm going to guess. But I've seen a little bit of it in some of the other games. But I had no idea that João Felix was that level, that kind of. One, I don't even really know what his best position is, but he was amazing in that game the other day against the Swiss. That's a player I really, really like.
That was João Felix without Ronaldo on the field.
yeah.
Is that what it is?
I think that was a big part of it.
And João Felix not playing for a Diego Simeone team. Like, he's so talented, but he spent the last couple of years of his young career either playing for Diego Simeone or with Ronaldo on the national team. And neither of those two things, I think, suit him, because he's this super creative, very lively. I mean, you'd call him an attacking midfielder, maybe. He's almost like a second striker, really. He's someone who should be playing next to a tall, strong guy in a 4-4-2, I feel like.
Giroud.
Yeah, oh, yes. Oh, my God, there you have it. Yeah, bring him in.
Everybody would be the best player ever playing next to Giroud.
Maybe that's the move for Milan.
World,
maybe that's the move for Milan. They sell Rafa Leao to the Premier League, and then they sink all that money into bringing João Felix to Milan, play him next to Giroud. Now, there's something, you know what? I'm not the first person to make this comparison, but there's something Kaka-esque about him, because he's sort of slightly tall and sort of little slight, and the way he moves through, the way he runs with the ball centrally.
That's not a bad comparison.
I get some Kaka vibes from it.
Interesting.
Interesting.
João Felix unleashed.
Yeah.
This is what we see. Maybe he's one of these stars that will kind of,
But
we'll
here's
see how
the
far he
question,
goes.
though. Against a defensively savvy and compact Morocco team, will there be space for these dudes to unleash anything? You know, this is the thing. Yeah. And actually, I wonder...
Is this the game for Ronaldo? You were going to say...
You know what? Yes. To have him sort of lurking in the penalty box.
His wheels spinning. I was like,
if they're going to have 60-65% possession, and Morocco's going to be in the Testudo formation, and they're going to have a lot of ball around the box.
You know how this is going to play out.
So, hold on. So, okay, you bring up so many possible scenarios. What if he starts Ronaldo now?
Yeah. And
or, I think your point, Peter, is that this is how it plays out. He comes in as a sub, and an added extra time, he scores the winner. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And then what do you do for the semifinal? Could you imagine how insufferable Ronaldo would be if he scored the winner in a quarterfinal, and now you're faced with having to play him or not in the semifinal?
But just the thing with Ronaldo that's always so challenging is when someone's that famous, when someone's that much of a global superstar and an icon, it's really hard to cut through the noise and just look at what is the guy actually bringing on the field in isolation over 90 minutes or however long he's there, right? And if you try to cut away everything and see what kind of player is he in 2022, he is still, or at least can be, a good finisher and a guy who turns up in moments. We've seen that from Manchester United, maybe not so much this year as last year. But he is someone who is just a black hole defensively, who doesn't have the pace to run in behind, who has a negative impact on players around him because they don't make the decisions they would normally make. So there's pros and cons to him. I certainly think keeping him on the bench with the possibility of bringing him on later on seems like the smart move to me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Okay.
God, I don't know.
Here we go. I'm going to let Lars go first because he hasn't gone first yet. So, Lars, Morocco, Portugal. Who are you taking? Well, tell us what the betting line is real quick. I'll even give you a little buffer time to...
Yeah. Please do that. This is not giving me buffer time. When you say, I'll give you some buffer time, and then you stop talking, that's not how that goes.
I thought you had the lines in front of you.
No, but I need to convert it into... Okay, I don't... There's no time to go through all the lines because there's
no, just this
everything.
game.
Yeah, just on
generally who's favorite on the line.
Okay, to qualify, just whatever method, but to go through, the implied probability of Portugal is 76%. So
to advance.
So the markets favor Portugal to go through quite heavily.
Now I want your prediction.
Listen, I think it will be Portugal, but I desperately hope I'm wrong. I really want to see Morocco knock them out. I just think this is probably a step too far.
Okay, Andy?
This game will go to PKs.
You're picking PKs again?
Yeah, I think this is a 0-0 PK game.
Who's going to win it in PKs?
No idea.
You have to pick one, sir, and write it down. Did you write down Lars's? Oh, yeah, you're taking Portugal and PKs. All right.
I want Morocco, though. I'm with Lars.
All right. I am going to take the Moroccans, and I'm going to take them in added time, and I'm going to tell you why. Because we've spent a lot of time prior to this World Cup talking about the oddity of the timing of this World Cup, and eventually the fact that all these teams have players that are coming out of league play or whatever that effect is. The continental bias that you've talked a lot about, Andy, and the fact that they are going to be the most amazing home team we've seen in a World Cup without being a host nation in a really long time. And
Peter, I am proud of you for this pick because you are taking a lot of factors that
I'm not just being a wild man.
No, this is the last time a team not from South America or Europe to make the Final Four was in 2002 when it was played in Asia.
South Korea.
Yep.
Yes. So I think Morocco's going to win like 1-0, 2-1 by a single goal scored in added time. That's my prediction.
I would be delighted
if
that happened.
That would be great. Lars, what was your pick finally? You said Portugal.
I'm just saying Portugal. Yeah, I think also with the center half Aguerd being doubtful.
That's my only concern is Saïs's hamstring and Aguerd being hurt. If either one of those guys are not starting, then maybe things are different.
So I think the news with Aguerd is that he has a low grade tear in his thigh. So normally it would be a couple of weeks out, but they're trying to sort of put him together for the game.
I'm sure they've got some sort of magic potion over there.
Lars, I put you down for 1-0.
It's not FDA approved.
Let's call it 2. 1-0
2-1?
and then 2-0.
2-0, okay.
They get the goal and then they counter
sort of
in
magical liquid injection of
magical tagines.
Yeah, something like that.
I like your pick though, Peter. That's
Thank you.
bold and not without substance. I mean,
I didn't just make. I had a reason.
Yes.
I said I'm going to make this prediction, but I'm going to explain why, and that's so. There we go. All right, let's talk about England and France, which is easily the best of all of these games lined up for a whole host of reasons. But I'm going to ask you this question, Lars, because I've been thinking a lot about how I think this game is going to play out. Am I wrong for stating the thing that makes France's strength is also potentially their Achilles heel? And that's what that's how England should go about this game. Do you know what I mean?
It's just the left flank you're thinking about, isn't it?
Well, no, I just mean either flank. I mean, I think if England is going to figure out how to beat France, is don't be overly reactive to those two guys and use the space that they leave for you behind there to your advantage. You've got look, here's the other thing I feel about this. France is not playing with their best roster, right? They don't have their best 11 available to them. England has their best 26 available to them. And I think, and I do believe at the end of the day, substitutes are going to be, when it comes to start putting in extra players, especially in added time, who is France putting on and who is Southgate going to have it to his disposal?
Depth is a factor. I'll give you that one. But I would argue that the injuries have forced Deschamps into playing an 11 that's better than the one he would have played. I think the injuries have made him a better manager because they've simplified things a little bit for him, but we haven't seen them. I mean, I know it's still a they beat Australia comfortably. They beat Denmark, but Denmark had some good moments in that game. And as we've learned, Denmark weren't actually that good. Then their B team lost to Tunisia, and then they beat an abject Poland. That's kind of France's route here. And I feel like they haven't proven an awful lot in that period, except for proving that they can look very good against bad teams, which shouldn't surprise anyone. They haven't really been tested down the other end, I think, by a properly potent opponent. And I'm looking at their left flank where you have Mbappe, who is, yes, he is probably the best player in the world. And he is just phenomenal coming in and such a danger, but he doesn't defend at all. And behind him, he has Theo Hernandez, who's the sort of crazy of the Hernandez brothers. Usually Luca Hernandez would play because he's kind of like the responsible one. Like, I'm sure when they were kids, he would be the one who would look after the house, right? Theo Hernandez. Whereas Theo Hernandez is like super attacking, always going down the flank. And having Theo Hernandez and Mbappe run at you is bad news if you're a right back. But you know what? It's not great news down the other end. Like, none of those are great at defending. So you're asking Rabiot to do the work of like three guys on that side. Griezmann's probably going to have to come deep and help out. So I think fighting fire with fire here for England and actually trying to pin them back. And it reminds me of something... For the 2018 World Cup, I slightly bizarrely spent the entire World Cup in Malta with John Arnorisa, as you do, and one of the
dropper.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that was both of you.
Yeah, stereo.
But one of the things he said is that as a player, he had this whole thing about the scarier the right winger he was up against, the more he would attack. Because his thinking is, okay, this guy's more talented than me, and this guy can dribble and all this, but he doesn't want to defend, and I can run, and I can run more than him, right?
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, if England go, oh my God, we're so afraid of these guys, and let Mbappe have the ball and run and do and have the interplay with sexy Olivier Giroud, then it'll go badly for them. But I think England, if they just go for this and try to attack France, there are a lot of guys on this team who don't really want to defend.
So both of you guys are making the same point. You brought it up first. Your friend in Malta said the same thing. This is what England should do.
Liverpool great, John Arnorisa.
Yes, right. Yes, historical game. But this is what England should do. This is what generation of England now should do also, because this is a great generation. This is what Southgate, the manager, should decide that they should do. Will England do this?
Yeah.
That is the question. That's the key. It's not what tactics are. Will England impose the game they can play with this generation against France, or are they going to succumb to France being ranked whatever they are in the world, 2, 3, 4, something like that?
But the French team on the field isn't the number 2 team
since 1966. When England plays whether it's group play or knockout rounds, when they play a weaker opponent, like a minnow team, they generally win.
Yeah.
When they play a tier 2 team, they generally have better results than not. They draw, they win. They've only won once against a top 10 ranked team since 1966. That was they beat somebody in 2002. Yeah, they beat Argentina in group play. Argentina didn't even get out of the group. This is England in the knockout rounds, the last few World Cups. They beat Paraguay, then lost to Argentina. They beat a pre-golden generation Belgium, beat Cameroon, they lost to Germany. They lost to Argentina in the next one. Then they beat Denmark, lost to Brazil. The next, they beat Ecuador, lost to Portugal. The next one, they lost to Germany. The next one, which is last World Cup, they beat Colombia, they beat Sweden, they lost to Croatia. They can beat the weak teams in the knockout rounds. When they face teams like France, they completely go mental on themselves about bringing it home and don't play the game they can play. The key is, this is Southgate's game. This is the game.
Yeah,
can
it really
he change that mentality this game?
Because even more recently, following up on that, but in the same thread, Andy, under Southgate, that's also been the thing. They've been better at winning the games they're supposed to win, but they haven't yet, in my opinion, had a sort of statement win against the big team. Now, I am discounting, and it's maybe controversially, I am discounting the Germany win at the Euros a little bit because Germany have gone home early from 2 World Cups now, and
they're no longer a top team.
It was an incredibly cathartic moment for England as a football nation to beat Germany in a knockout game at Wembley. You know, what a moment for them.
Yep.
But I'm not convinced that actually proves what they think it proves in terms of the Southgate team actually being able to beat one of the best.
But the only people that have to believe it are Southgate and the players. It's about them at this point. This team can beat France. This team can beat this France.
Yes,
it's just up to them. Sorry, Peter, it's just up to them.
If I had told you before the tournament that before we knew anything about this tournament or the rosters, that England would play France in the quarterfinals, and England would have all their best player, and France would be into this tournament without Pogba, without Conte, without Benzema, and they would have to play England without those guys. And in the midfield, they had Rabiot and Tchouaméni. As nice as those guys have played, you would go, "Oh, England will beat." That's the game. That's England's game, right? No,
I still trust them to mess it up.
See, okay, but that's fair.
That's completely 1,000% fair.
Yeah, that's fair because that's what they've done over and over and over and over.
Because the reality of England is what's on paper is not whatever happens with them at this level in reality.
But Southgate knows this. This is why this might be I don't know.
Watershed moment?
Is it Charlie Brown? Am I having a Charlie Brown moment?
I think so. The big question mark for Southgate. So Southgate has embraced a logic that I kind of agree with, the sort of tournament thinking that these tournaments are generally won by the team who don't mess up defensively and who manage to have moments up front that win them for them. So he's constantly criticized for being too defensive, but he wants them to have a solid fundament defensively, and then he trusts that either Harry Kane or Raheem Sterling or someone, Bukayo Saka, someone up front will turn the game from them. And you know what? That's been successful for him by and large. In his reign, they've reached the semi-final in Russia. They reached the final of the last Euros. That's much better than what England did before, right?
Yeah.
Now, some of that was the luck of the draw, but at least they didn't embarrass themselves like they did in Brazil in 2014 or at the Euros in 2016. So there's been improvement. My point is that I don't think that way of thinking will beat France. I think the whole point about this French team is that I don't think they want to defend. I think if you take the game to them, you will pose them challenges that they haven't been presented with so far in the tournament. Whereas if you play quite conservatively, if you try to sit back, if you try to be safety first, then Mbappe and Giroud and Dembele will get you at some point.
Yeah.
And you'll lose. Whereas if you stick it to them and you force Dembele and Mbappe to defend, they don't want to do it. It's not what they're good at. So try to force them to do it.
Andy, your pick, England, France.
France 2-1.
I'm going to predict an English win.
Nice.
And it's a 1 goal, and it'll happen in regulation in 90 minutes.
So 1-0,
So
2-1, 3-2.
Yeah.
It's the Mbappe thing for me that I can't quite get past. I think he will put away his chances when they appear, and I'm not sure the English will. So let's call it 2-0 France.
Okay.
Oh, 2-0. Okay.
Whoa.
You know, the more I think, Peter, I think we were trying to figure out who in the past is Mbappe more like. It's not Pele. We determined that. But you came up with R9, Ronaldo, the original Ronaldo. And I think the more I think about it, I think that's
a very good comparison.
That is a really good comparison.
Young R9 before all the knee injuries is a very good comparison.
I hope I never see fat Mbappe when he's in his 40s. Because every time I see fat C7 or R7, I get really sad.
I have the opposite. I have the opposite. When I see former footballers who have put on weight, I think good for you. Just live your best life, my friend.
There you go.
Again, just a name drop John Arna again, but Risa was up at 6 a.m. Doing kickboxing in the gym. I'm like, dude, you're retired. You don't have to do this again. And then he would be back in the gym in the afternoon. He'd do double gym sessions. I'm like, what are you training for? You look fine.
We will take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about a few miscellaneous items.
Trivia answer.
And trivia answer. Andy's trivia. We'll do that next. And just like that, we are at part 3 of our quarterfinal preview for Qatar KickAround. All right, so we've made all our predictions. We know how this thing's going to play out. We're all confident in all of that, although it's a complete backtracking of our original predictions. I did, by the way, Lars, you mentioned the prediction wheels that are up on our website. Have you looked at those lately?
I would like to not do that.
They're like grisly crime scenes out of the show Dexter.
You know what's funny though is, and I think Lars has the same semifinal as I do. We both had England and Argentina in the semis, and we both picked against them. And just now, who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
But teams have been different to what we thought. It happens.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're not
reality.
soothsayers.
Reality intervened.
It did. All right, let's go to Professor Andy's World Cup trivia question.
Okay. So the question was, out of the 4 teams in the
Friday's games.
Yeah, Friday's games, tomorrow's games. That's the Netherlands, Argentina, Brazil, and Croatia. Since the current format was introduced in 1998, that's 32 teams, which team in this squadron out of these 4 teams has reached the semis the least amount of times?
I think I know the answer to this.
The teams are the Netherlands, Argentina, Brazil, Croatia.
Lars, would you like to go first?
I think it's Brazil.
I'm going to say Argentina.
Lars is wrong. Peter is right.
Damn it.
Dun, dun, dun.
Brazil and the Netherlands both have reached the semis 3 out of the 6 times. Croatia twice. Argentina only 1 time in 2014. Sorry,
I thought you were doing a trick question again.
It is kind of tricky because most people
nobody would say Brazil or Argentina normally.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would have said Argentina. They've been pretty bad. And anyway,
they got to a final.
I didn't trust myself enough here.
And Croatia, people would say Croatia.
Thanks, Lars. I appreciate you letting me have that one. I think you guessed Brazil knowing it was wrong just to make me look good. Because you're that kind of friend.
Let's go with that. Let's go with that.
You're my football talking friend. I like you about that. Just a couple of other items before we finish this. The word has come down that although I think Ernie Stewart kind of
poo-pooed the word.
Yeah, which is that the U.S. Soccer Federation are already in discussions with renewing Greg Berhalter's contract, and that has created a firestorm of outrage on U.S. soccer social media channels, which is surprise, shocker to everybody. And one of the things that keeps coming up is, why would they do that? Why don't they go talk to any of these potential people that they could and everybody starts naming all the obvious ones, Lowe, Bielsa, Lopetegui, or whatever,
Martinez.
Yes, and I keep saying back to them, well, that works under the supposition they haven't talked to those guys, right? Just because
a lot of things can play out here. One thing that can be happening is Berhalter doesn't want back, but is willing to stay on as an interim while they find the right candidate. They need a coach who better.
And they've got games coming up, right?
And Berhalter still needs to look for a gig, or he may want some time off. So that's one option. One is Berhalter wants back. They may or may not. So you still enter conversations with the coach, right?
Yeah,
so it could be any number of things.
And the other question, Lars, is what are the odds that somebody like a Bielsa or a Pochettino or a Martinez or any of these guys that you would consider to be qualified as World Cup or national team experienced coaches would want to come coach the United States national team?
Ooh, there's a lot to unpack in that question, because I mean, you mentioned Roberto Martinez in there. I mean, that's not something I would want to see if I was the U.S. national team. No, but I think your point is, what are the chances that one of these big names that you would see linked would come? Now, I think that's an interesting question. I think the U.S. national team is an interesting prospect. But I should preface any discussion on this by saying being a national team manager is a really strange gig. It isn't quite the same as being a club manager. It has very, very different demands for your skill set and for your character, I think. And I think it's very important to have not just the best manager you can find, but the right coach for the project and the right coach for the crop of players you have, someone who's a good cultural fit, someone who understands what the job is. And that sounds obvious, but it isn't actually obvious. It's this is why some of those names that would be thrown out are not big and exciting names, yes, but not natural fits for this job at all, I would think.
You and I, Andy, for years have dreamt of a day that Marcelo Bielsa was coaching the U.S. men's national team. But I'm also in a position now is that I don't know if that's a good idea.
Right, exactly. And I agree 100% with what Lars just said. I think you agree with that also. A part of it is be careful what you wish for and what you get. But when we were wanting Bielsa,
Mexico and Tata Martinez.
Yeah, when we were wanting Bielsa, the U.S. national team program was in a very different place, right? We wanted somebody to come here and develop and put in a system and develop the players for that system and work with the players with the American type of player that would fit in that system, all that. I think this is a different gig. This is a 3.5-year job to get a team largely whose base is already in place to get them to peak at around the knockout stages of a 2026 tournament.
That's played in the United States.
That's played. Yeah. That's the job of this new coach, whoever that may be, whether it's Berhalter or somebody else. That's what you have.
Right. And my point is everybody talks about Jesse Marsh or Jim Curtin or Caleb Porter, which are all fine, well-established American coaches. But my point is none of those guys have ever coached a national team in a World Cup. And the kids that were in this tournament weren't the only ones that were gaining experience points. Greg Berhalter was learning on the job too. And by the way, made a lot of mistakes in this tournament, but also learned a lot and set the team up very well over the course of their 4 games.
Now, a lot of people are anti a coach coaching for more than one cycle at the national team level.
Yep.
I think 5 of the 8 quarterfinalists had a coach in his second cycle, I think. I think it was 5.
I think 5. I think it's even greater than that number.
Okay.
But I think 5 of them are in consecutive cycles. There's a couple that, like Louis van Gaal, who's back, who's in his second, but it's not consecutive. Okay. So yes, I just the thing about Berhalter is, and I'm not advocating this. No. I'm not making the case that they should rehire him. I'm just saying that if you wanted to be unbiased and make a case as to why he's the best choice, I think I can make that case and win it more times than not.
You can make it both ways. That's the thing. And, the rap on Berhalter, and this is what Lars said, it's national team coach, club coach are 2 very different things. And sometimes you can overcomplicate things at the national team level. You don't have them on a week-to-week basis. You don't have league play to fix things. You have to approach things in a very different way and kind of adapt to the players that you have in a simple way, right?
You have the players you have.
Exactly.
So you have to. I'm very suspicious of coaches who are very closely wedded to a specific system, and they tend to be the ones who really excel and stand out and do exciting things on the club scene, right?
Because you have a while to work it out.
Yeah, and also if there are a few things lacking from your squad, you go to the owner and say, hey, I need a new right back. That doesn't really work for the national team. It requires more flexibility.
I do think Berhalter was too complicated, but I also, to his credit, thinks he softened on fitting players into his system. I don't think he always got it right, but again, at the end of the day, before everybody just is in a big hurry to push him out the door, we all have to have an honest conversation about what are the realistic options at hand as an alternative.
Well, I think that's where the U.S. Federation is.
Yes,
I think that's what they're thinking
completely agree with you. And I think your point that they could leave him on for another few months just as an interim person is also a thing that nobody talks about. Everybody's in a rush to bitch about this, and they don't really know the realities of it. So everybody just needs to be patient and see how it all plays out. But I also appreciate it's not like the Federation has given us a lot of reasons to trust him in the first place. Last point about Berhalter. So much of people that don't like about Berhalter has nothing to do with his performance and everything to do with how he got the job in the first place because of the nepotism. If he wasn't Jay's brother, everybody else's opinion, I think so many people's opinion of Greg's performance would change. But it's because he's Jay's brother. At the time he was hired, I think that's just set in stone how people were going to feel about him no matter how the team played.
And look at the teams who are in the quarterfinals. All of them have got coaches from their home country, first of all, so which is maybe worth bearing in mind when you see all these big names thrown out.
Including Morocco and Japan, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And look at, Morocco is an interesting case in point. They had a foreign, well-traveled, experienced expert, and they fired him and got a guy who most recently coached in the Moroccan league, and he's done really well. And Argentina, Scaloni's in charge, as I understand it, mainly because he was cheap and available. And that's kind of why he was put in charge when he was, and it's gone much better than anyone expected. So I think someone who knows the national sort of football culture to begin with is a good idea. I don't think it necessarily has to be an American, but I think it would help if there's someone who's coached in America. We have a commenter suggesting Tata Martino, and it's very interesting because immediately post Atlanta United, he would have said, "Yeah, bring it on," and then things have been bad in Mexico. But as Andy has hinted, there might be reasons that are not necessarily to do with his competency level, to do with why that's gone wrong, right?
Yeah, the politics. We know you want Bruce Arena.
No,
Peter.
I don't. I don't know who I want. I really, honestly,
right.
I don't. Okay. Well, the football drug dealer will show up at our houses tomorrow, early in the morning, at least American time, and we can all take our injection in between our toes and get back to feeling good, Lars, because we have more of it arriving, and it's the best, most dangerous and potent version of the drug. It's World Cup quarterfinals. You excited? You ready to go? Okay, Lars is not paying attention.
I am very excited. I am ready to go.
He's looking over his picks and having second.
Yeah, he's having second guesses. Yes, I don't know what's going on. All right,
Me
Lars,
too.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks for doing this. I missed you yesterday.
The comments are going wild. Someone just said, "What about Michael Bradley?" I think that's.
Oh no, no.
This is why I need to stop looking at the comments all the time.
Don't read the comments, Lars. I love Michael Bradley, but I don't want him to be the manager of the national team. I want to see him do something else. He can go do a USL team or something first.
Get Bob Bradley back again.
Well, that's not the worst shout. All right, now you're really going to piss everybody off. It's good to talk to you again, my friend.
I'm going to go hide.
We'll speak to you tomorrow and Friday. All right.
Anytime, guys.
All right, very good, Andy.
Yes, sir.
Nice spending time with you again, sir.
It's nice to be back.
Yes. Thank you for those watching the live stream, downloading the podcast. We got really nice compliments from our bosses the other day about how well this is going, and a lot of that is up to you, due to you guys, and we thank you very much. We will speak to you tomorrow after the first set of quarterfinal games. Get stuck in and win your 50s.